Okay, so our final keynote this year, I'd like to welcome Mr. Jayadev Gopinath, General Manager, Advanced Technologies, Innovation, Data and Analytics for Toyota Motor North America. He's obviously originally from India and spent several years in California and has moved. He's just told me he's living in South Lake now. Moved here a couple years ago and enjoying it very much. You can get a much bigger house here in Texas than you can in California. And believe it or not, the traffic is still better than the LA area, he was telling me. And so we're glad that he's here with us today. In his role, he's responsible for enabling technology, data, and analytics to drive innovation and efficiency, allowing Toyota to have closer connection with its customers, dealers, and partners. Towards this, he is deeply involved in a number of initiatives, including Customer 360, Manufacturing Analytics, IoT, which I assume is Internet of Things, product quality analytics, and connected car, some interesting stuff. Jay's been with Toyota for 10 years. Prior to joining Toyota, he spent more than 9 years with Hitachi Consulting, where he oversaw the development and management of the Southern California and Arizona practices as a key member of the Pacific Southwest leadership team. Jay holds a bachelor's degree in engineering from the National Institute of Technology, one of the best schools in India, and an MBA from USC's Marshall School of Business. So please join me in welcoming Jay to our symposium. Thank you.
Thank you for the warm welcome. Can you all hear me? I was mentioning, when they invited me to speak here, that I didn't realize I was going to be following the president of the Fed. I may have had second thoughts on that, but I think what he said is, hey, we had a small coffee break. You all reset. Maybe set the expectations a little lower, I guess. But on an interesting note, though, a lot of what was discussed, right? The technology-driven economy, for example. I think that's what he said, right? Technology-driven economy is really what I'm going to talk about as well, because ultimately, when you look at the digital economy, it is a technology-driven economy, and how that's impacting the car industry. He talked about car dealers, and I'm going to talk about the same thing right now in terms of how that's getting disrupted, right, with the advent of digital and technologies and things like that. I also wanted, on behalf of Toyota, to thank UTD and the Dallas community for welcoming us here to Dallas. As I was mentioning, I certainly appreciate the larger house and the easier traffic. The weather's still something I'm getting used to, but really happy to be here. Toyota's been, I think we moved into a new campus, I think it's about 2 years ago. No, actually, exactly a year ago, right? And if any of you are in that part of town, let me know, and I can give you guys a tour of the campus as well. So with that, let me start a little bit with the history of Toyota, specifically in North America, right? So Toyota came to North America about 60 years ago, right? We started off as a dealership in Hollywood, basically in California, right? At the time, it's actually an interesting note. If you look at the U.S. headquarters of Nissan, Toyota, Honda, they're all within a mile of each other in Los Angeles, because when the Pacific Rim companies came to the U.S., that's where they established themselves in Los Angeles, right, as a port city. In the 80s, we built our first factory in North America, in Kentucky, where we still build the Camry. It's probably one of the largest factories here in North America. So over the years now, we sell about 2 million vehicles in the U.S., and of that, about 70% of them are actually manufactured in the U.S. as well. And we build those vehicles out of, as you can see there, about 10 different manufacturing facilities here in North America. Camry has been the #1 retail car in the U.S., I think, for 15 straight years, right? So we're very proud of that. And you may also know that, if you look at any vehicle, for example, right, it's got content and parts from many parts of the world, right? If you add that up and look at if you kind of consider all that, Camry is actually the most American vehicle in the United States. And in fact, you may be interested to know that the top 5 most American vehicles are all Japanese. And it is, jokes aside, and part of it is because of, as you know, Toyota's manufacturing philosophy of just in time, right? So when Toyota manufactures vehicles, most of the suppliers are in and around the factory itself. So you will see Many Japanese companies, right, they manufacture all the parts right there, right around the factory, and that's really why they have high content, of local content. Now, Toyota has gone through transition, right, over the years, right? I don't know if you all know, but Toyota actually started off as a power loom company, right, in the textile industry many, many years ago, right? We transitioned from that to be an automotive company, and now we're on the cusp of another major transition to a mobility company. Now, what does that mean? What is a mobility company? What does that mean? That means that our goal is to enable mobility for our consumers and for society, wheels being optional. So if you remember, and I'm sure how many of you saw the Toyota commercials during the Winter Olympics, you kind of got a sense of that, right? You got a sense of what Toyota is looking at. Maybe I'll give you one example, which is that Project Blade that you see on the top. It's a device you can wear around your neck, and it's for kind of the visually impaired, right? And it can read, for example, signs and street signs and things like that. So you can imagine, you're going to the restroom, and Blade will tell you, this is the men's restroom versus here's the women's restroom, for example. So that's an example of some of the things that Toyota is working on and building to enable mobility in general, right? And just like any other industry, digital and technology, as we talked about, and I use that interchangeably, is disrupting Toyota as well, and disrupting all automotive companies as well. And in fact, I think it's probably disrupting every industry, for that matter. Right? Here's a few examples of what that means for us. And by the way, a lot of this material is from McKinsey survey. So for one, it is enabling smarter operations. And I'm going to talk about a few examples of that. Things like connected factories, connected cars, right? Connected supply chain. And this is fundamentally changing the way in which factories are built. It's changing the way in which supply chains are architected, and is actually providing significant value and benefit and productivity in those areas as well. The second is advanced, advanced vehicle technologies, right? Things like self-driving cars, as well as the various powertrains. So Toyota has established a company called Toyota Research Institute. It's set up in the Bay Area in Silicon Valley, and they're working on the the self-driving car. We do have a few prototypes that's on the road, and we are testing those. In fact, we had to suspend that. You're all familiar with the Uber accident that happened in Austin. So after that, we've suspended some of that, but we are working quite aggressively on self-driving vehicles as well. The thing about self-driving vehicles also is that, the technologies that are coming out of self-driving vehicles, right, are going to start showing up in our vehicle line, not necessarily all in self-driving, for example, right? Things like adaptive cruise control and things like, lane change and lane departure warnings and all that. So those technologies that make up, ultimately self-driving technologies, you're going to start seeing them appear sooner than you think, I think, in my opinion, in vehicles, right, as they start getting deployed on the road. Similarly, on the powertrain side, Toyota, as you know, it's was the leader in hybrid vehicles. This being Texas, I may want to ask the question: do you know what a hybrid vehicle is? No. No, sorry. I was going to have, I was going to ask you, do you guys know what the Prius vehicles are? No, But yeah, Toyota is very, as you know, industry leader in hybrid vehicles. But we also have strategies around the hydrogen economy, right? Hydrogen vehicles, as well as the electric vehicles as well. By the way, hydrogen and electric vehicles are both electric vehicles, except that one, the electricity comes from the battery, another, it comes from hydrogen. Right. The third is digital made physical. I mean, this is, I think, what the Fed president was talking about, which is, customers are increasingly making their shopping decisions online, right? And I'm not sure how many of you, look forward to the traditional model of going to a dealership and haggling over the price, right? So, as that move to digital and as that move to making purchases online happens, how do you, ensure that seamless transition from that digital to physical? And I'm going to talk a little bit about that a little later as well. Regulations, as I don't know if you're Spider-Man fans, right? But as Spider-Man said, right, with great power comes great responsibility, with a lot of data comes a lot of responsibility as well. You saw the Facebook scenario. There are increasing regulations around things like GDPR. So digital, is powered by data, and as companies like Toyota, keep inundated with that data, there is a big responsibility on us to secure it, from a privacy point of view, from a security point of view, and regulations are emerging as well. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well as we go. Urban mobility, right? I'm going to talk a little bit about this also, but new models like car sharing, right? Mobility on demand, cars on demand, the Uber model, right? Those are disrupting the industry as well, powered by connected. And automotive companies like Toyota are responding to that as well. I'll talk a little bit further about that. And then ultimately, a lot of new players in the market, right? You've heard about the Google self-driving car, for example, right? It seems like all these tech companies want to be automotive companies, and all the automotive companies want to be tech companies. So, being from Toyota, I think we're going to win. But anyway, but there's also partnership. It's not just competition, but there's a lot of partnership happening between the tech companies and automotive companies as well as we enable digital. An example is, the next generation Toyota vehicles are all going to be enabled with Alexa, right, as a personal assistant. So that's happening as well. So what is driving digital, right? I think, in my opinion, three things: data, connectivity, and technology, right? So let's start with connectivity, right? And as the Fed chair said, with the advent of cloud, right, and mobile, everything is connected these days, right? And what does connectivity mean? It means that data and information can move seamlessly between these various devices, right? Give a few examples there: connected factory, connected cars, connected offices, etc. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of these later, but let me touch briefly on V2V and V2I. V2V is vehicle-to-vehicle communications, right? So imagine, you're driving down the I-75 freeway at 70 miles an hour, and a Toyota vehicle, 3 vehicles in front of you, informs your vehicle that we are slowing down, please be ready, stop. That is vehicle-to-vehicle communication, right? V2I is vehicle-to-infrastructure communication. So imagine you're approaching an intersection, and the traffic light informs your vehicle that it is about to turn red. So that is V2I as well. And this is emerging right now. The NHTSA and the government are involved in this, and they are right now creating standards, right? Spectrum and standards around enabling this. So that's coming as well, where you can be driving down the road, and vehicles are talking to each other, infrastructure is talking to your vehicle, and hopefully making your driving experience a lot more easier and safer, ultimately. So I'm going to talk briefly about these 3 things: connected car, connected factory, and then ultimately the connected customer. So connected car, right? The car increasingly is becoming a mobile device on wheels, right? And how do you, and seamlessly integrating into your digital life, right? And what that means is, how can information, data, your preferences seamlessly transition between your vehicle, your device, and your house, your home, right? And that's what we're working on. Right now in North America, 100% of all Lexus vehicles are connected, and we are starting to get there for Toyota as well. We're starting to connect Toyotas as well, and pretty soon 100% of all Toyota vehicles will be connected as well. And what connected means is your vehicle is literally connected to the cloud. So an example would be, let's say, again, you're driving down the road, and an indicator light comes on in your vehicle. As soon as it is safe to stop, let's say you stop, and as soon as it's safe, you will actually get a text message saying, here's exactly what went wrong with your car. And pretty soon thereafter, you will get, hopefully, a call from your dealer saying that, hey, we noticed that your car had this issue. Do you want to bring it in to fix it? Right? For Lexus vehicles, this is already in place. Right? If you buy a new Lexus vehicle today, you already get this capability. Right? Another example of this would be your personal preferences. Right? So let's say you have your settings, right? Your seat settings, your air conditioning, HVAC settings, your radio settings. You can take your preferences with you to every single Toyota vehicle. Right? So you rent a car, you go in, you enter your ID, and your preferences come with you. right? It downloads from the cloud, right? In other words, your preferences are stored in the cloud, and you can download it to any Toyota vehicle, right? Whether it's yours, your friends, or it's a rental, right? So that's another piece we're working on. Another interesting thing that's coming out of this connected is actually new business models, right? Things like usage-based insurance, right? Toyota has set up a subsidiary to start offering usage-based insurance, right? Another innovation is car sharing. We actually have a pilot going on in Hawaii. I'm actually want to do a field trip to check it out to Hawaii. But what we're doing there is, the cars are parked in appropriate locations, right? You can use your mobile device to find the car you need, right, and you want. As you approach the vehicle, the key is automatically downloaded to your phone. Your phone is the key to open the car and even start the car, right? And once you're done, you can park the vehicle in an appropriate location, and automatically your billing and all that also done through a mobile device. So this is not fantasy. This is actually a pilot that we are actually doing in Hawaii right now, with Servco, which is our distributor in Hawaii. Connected car is part of a larger ecosystem we call the Internet of Things. You've probably heard that buzzword. And here's some statistics from both Gartner and IDG in terms of the connected economy. Gartner estimates the connected things to be a $25 billion economy, and I think IDC estimates a $1.7 trillion market by 2020. And connected Internet of Things is everything from connected washing machines to connected cars to connected factory. And I think where we're seeing the most value, as it says, 70% of the value enablement will be, we believe, in the B2B scenario. And that is for us what we call the connected factory scenario, right? So you've heard of, I think it's called Industry 4.0, the connected factory, where all the different robots, the different sensors, the different machines in the factory are all connected. And we are able to drive information and data and control them, right, through this connected ecosystem. So we right now are working on a few use cases around things like energy management, for example. How do you reduce energy consumption in the factory by having connected air conditioners, for example, or connected HVAC machines. Around safety, right? How can we monitor the safety of our team members in the factory, right, using connected technology? We have also use cases around predictive maintenance. How can we decide that a particular robot or a particular machine is about to fail? So we can fix that before it actually fails, because if a machine does fail, as there's major disruption. Just an example, in our Toyota factory in Georgetown, takt time is, I think, is 58 seconds. In other words, every 58 seconds, a new Camry rolls off the line. So let's say you have a machine goes down and you have an hour outage. You can imagine how many Camrys we're talking about, right? So it's very important for us to kind of understand, what that, where a machine is about to break, and connected technologies are allowing us to do that. And then finally, around things like quality, right? The example here that I'm showing is around in our paint shop, right, in Georgetown, where we had a little challenge where we found that the quality of the paint that was not up to our expectations. Now what we do is we do visually inspect the vehicle, and we make sure that the quality is top notch. In fact, we usually win the J.D. Power Best Paint Quality, but it was actually done through brute force, right, with a lot of people actually watching and inspecting the car to make sure there's no quality issues. But what we did with that is using connected technology and data science and AI, we were able to figure out what was causing those paint issues. Paint is a very sensitive area. Paint is it's a chemical reaction, right? And now you imagine that the way we do paint is we don't actually spray paint, we actually throw paint at the vehicle, right? And it's a chemical reaction as it kind of adheres to the vehicle. And it's very sensitive to things like temperature, humidity, and all those different things. And so it was actually very interesting that what data showed us and what the AI showed us was very counterintuitive to what the engineers were thinking, right? Engineers typically think, yeah, humidity and temperature and all that impact the quality of the paint. And while that was true, what we found was that it wasn't as straight cut as that. The impact of humidity and temperature were different for different paint types. And some of the fixes the engineers were making were actually really not helping, in fact, hurting, different paint colors and different paint configurations than what they were expected. So here's a great example of a connected paint shop and the analytics that we were able to derive from that, helping us with improving the paint quality. And then ultimately, it's about the connected customer. As we talked about earlier, the old model of buying a car where you walk into a dealership and you haggle with the dealer for the right price, it's totally starting to go away. And customers increasingly want to make their purchases online, right? They want to look for cars, they want to shop for cars online, they want to get their financing online. And then when they do eventually go to the dealership, perhaps, to pick up that vehicle, they want that experience to seamlessly transfer, right, from their digital world to that physical world, right? So Toyota is working on this kind of set of initiatives called retail transformation, as you can see there on this. And all the different kind of red boxes there are all the different systems connected, right, that are going to be part of our retail transformation ecosystem. And in the center there is Customer 360. Because what customers are also looking for is that hyper-personalized experience, right, as you are shopping with us. And that Customer 360 engine that we have in the middle does that. And what that is about is, as a customer, right, goes through their journey with Toyota, right, they have a number of different touch points with us, right? Some of them are, digital, some of them are physical. You go through various websites, you go to the Toyota website, and the goal of retail transformation is to capture all those touch points so that we can get an understanding of you as a customer and then offer you services, a next best action based on our understanding of what you're looking for. And this is what our Customer 360 system is providing us. And I'm going to talk a little bit further about Customer 360 in a few slides down. So data is key to digital. If you recollect, almost all the examples I talked about was about connectivity, enabling data, right, to flow seamlessly and helping us with that value. So therefore, in order to innovate, to take advantage of the digital economy, you need to be a data and analytics-driven company. Now, but the data itself, right, with digital is changing, right? It's not the kind of the old, structured data, right? Because now we are getting data from, connected cars, from connected factories, from social media, right? And this data differs significantly from data that enterprises and large corporations, I'm sure that many of you are working for, have seen in the past, right? In terms of, in the bottom I have the 5 V's. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with big data, but the definition of big data is they have these 5 V's, right? Which is volume. The data here we're talking about is high volume. We're talking about terabytes and petabytes of data. Velocity, right? We're talking real-time streaming data, right? Not the transactional type, but we're talking real-time streaming data. Variety, we're talking structured and unstructured data. We're talking veracity. The data may not be all accurate, right? There is going to be a level of a fudge in that. And then, of course, value as well. So in order for us, for Toyota or any company, to take advantage of the digital economy and to be a data-driven company, we need to take this data and convert that into business value, whether it is business strategy, profitability, efficiency, and so on and so forth. And that really is kind of a cornerstone, I think, of innovating in the digital economy. But it's not that we don't have data. In fact, like any large company, Toyota has got a lot of data. The problem has always been that the data has been very siloed, right? If you all work in large companies, this is a classic big company problem, right? You got data, you got a lot of data, but they're all very siloed. And part of the reason that it's siloed is because the business units are siloed, and each of the business units has their own data, and they're all siloed from each other. So, but to get to true value, right, in the digital economy, you need to put the data together. You need cross-functional data is what makes kind of the engine of the digital economy, not the siloed data, right? And that was the key to this. So we came up with the Toyota Big Data Platform, and it's been around for about 3-4 years now, where we're bringing together that cross-functional data, whether it's in manufacturing, customer, vehicle, together into our internal big data engine. And then we are connecting that with a lot of the external data. It could be social media data. It could be data, in the automotive industry, we buy a lot of data from companies like IHS Automotive and JD Power. We bring it together and hook it up together and link it together, and that gives you that cross-functional value. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. So imagine you take your car into the dealership, right, and you have peeling paint, for example. And I'm sure it's not a Toyota because we don't have peeling paint. But let's say you do that, right? So your warranty system, right, it gets entered into your warranty system, you got peeling paint. We should be able to, through this big data engine, figure out what was actually the temperature in the paint shop when your vehicle was actually painted. And see, is there a kind of a link between your paint issue and the temperature in the paint shop? And then we can kind of go back and forth to see, okay, if your vehicle had that issue, maybe there are other vehicles that have the same challenge as well. So that's kind of what I call it, that cross-functional data where you're now tracking customer data like warranty data to manufacturing IIoT data, right? Industrial IoT data is where we get the paint information. Link it all together in this Toyota Big Data Platform. So let me give you another example of this. This is the Prius V, and I'm hoping again that you know what the Prius is, right? It's a hybrid car. And we launched the Prius, I think, in late 2011, right? In April of 2012, right, we started seeing a lot of kind of noise, let's say, from a warranty point of view around this groaning noise, right, when the car was started, right? And then in about August of that year, we started seeing a lot of call center complaints as well. So obviously, we knew there was a problem. And then obviously, we turned around and we fixed it, right? So by June of next year, we did a tech bulletin, we fixed it, and we recalled the vehicles, and we got it all fixed, taken care of. But what was interesting was, in January of 2012, we started seeing enough indicators in social media that there was a problem with that vehicle in terms of the groaning noise, right? So one of the key concepts in any manufacturing company, especially for Toyota, is something called EDER, right? Early detection, early resolution. So you want to find issues as soon as possible because you want to fix it as soon as possible, make your customers happy, but then also you're avoiding the cost of having more vehicles with defective components, right, coming down, right, the assembly line, right? So if we had this cross-functional data, we could have figured this out 5 months ahead of time. What was even more interesting was that we would have been able to find the root cause of the problem if we had social media data, right? And here's why. How many of you have taken, you had a problem with your vehicle, you took it into the dealership, and all of a sudden you're not able to replicate the problem, right? Well, this was the case in this as well because this particular groaning noise was very specific to a particular weather condition in terms of temperature and things like that. So when you took your car into the dealership and that weather condition was not prevalent, then you wouldn't be able to replicate it. So what people had done, though, in social media, though, was they had actually uploaded videos of that car with that noise, right? So when our technicians saw that, they were like, man, I wish we had this because we could have actually figured out what was wrong with the vehicle a lot sooner if we had that social media data, right? And so that's the kind of the power of what I call cross-functional data. Here we're talking about linking together social media data to corporate data to improve EDR, improve our customer satisfaction, improve our quality of the vehicle, right? So that is our Toyota Big Data Platform. So I'm going to getting towards the end of my presentation here. So one of the things, at least we have found from our experience, right, is how do you become a data-driven company, right? So you have data, right? To get all the data together, right, in this big data platform was very difficult for us to do, right? A lot of technical challenges, but we got it done, right? From data, you want to drive insights. From insights, you want to drive action. From action, you want to measure results, right? So data, insights, action, results, that's your, call it your data analytics ecosystem or supply chain, let's call it that, right? What we found was, yes, very difficult to get the data together, difficult to drive insights from the data. But what was very interesting for us was the most challenging thing for us to do was to get action taken from those insights. And the reason for that is a culture change. Because people are used to doing work a certain way. They have a standard operating procedure on how they do their work. And now you're telling them, hey, change the way in which you have done your work by leveraging these insights. And it just doesn't compute for them. They're like, no, but I've always done it a certain way. So in order for us to be successful in this data-driven economy, we have to change the culture within the company. We have to change, can I call it the standard operating procedure within the company to take advantage of the data and insights. And we found that to be one of the biggest challenges we had. And just as an example of what this is now we launched the new Camry, the 2018 Camry last year. And we decided that we want to use a data-driven approach to do the marketing, right? The digital marketing for the Camry, right? So the way we want to do this was we're going to use our big data platform to figure out who are those customers who are in market to buy a new vehicle, right? Then we wanted to target just those customers, right, for the marketing. So for example, let's say you are in market to buy a new vehicle, let's say, and let's say you are, power, you liked power in vehicles, right, the horsepower in vehicles. So for one, if you're in market, let's say you go to Amazon.com or Google, you will see an ad for Camry because you're in market, because we only show to you if we believe that you're in market to buy a new vehicle, right? And when you click that Camry ad, let's say you are in the horsepower kind of guy, the landing page you will see would be, has a new Camry more horsepower than the old one. But let's say you are, fuel efficient, conscious. The landing page you will see would be the new Camry more gas mileage than the old one. Or let's say you are, family. You say the new Camry more room than the old one, right? That's your targeted marketing. Well, the challenge with this was, as we were coming up with this idea and this concept, the marketing department was like, no, but we've always done marketing this way. We've always asked the agency to do this. We've always done it this way. And how can we change? We don't have the time to change and all that, right? As you can imagine, right, in any company. Well, lucky for us, there was good top-down executive direction, go do this. And we did. And we found more than a 50% improvement in both efficiency and effectiveness with a new campaign. And this is not me saying this, is our agency said this, right? But so therefore, when the marketing department saw the results, they were convinced. So results is extremely key as well to change the culture, right? You want to show the results, and that'll help drive it. And now, going next year, they're going to go all in with this. The digital marketing is going to be entirely based on a data-driven kind of way of driving marketing. So what I want to conclude was the key, this is Peter Drucker, not me. The key to this is not necessarily to have a strategy, which is very important, but in order to succeed, culture is king, right? As Peter Drucker said, right? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. And unless we can work on that culture, right, you are not going to get the benefits, and you're not going to be able to drive your company to innovate kind of in that digital economy. With that, I guess I'll open for questions. And I went very fast here, so.
Thanks for coming in. Just a personal question to see if I'm going to fit in your database and get advantage. I got a Lexus 350 a couple years ago, so I went to the dealer in North Plano, because you buy it from there, and it spent a lot of time. It's traffic to go up there. Some of the simple things like, oil change or the 5K check, there's a really good independent dealer that works on Lexus that's here. You know, if I go to him, am I missing out on all the stuff that Lexus does at your, you know, your dealer, or do your independent dealers, are they tied into your data network?
Yeah. The answer is, I guess, no, right? So right now, we link all the Lexus and Toyota dealers directly back into our network. The only way in which independent dealer would be connected is if they use some of the systems that, let's say, Toyota and Lexus provide. So you can, independent dealers can also use kind of what we call dealer management systems. If they do, then they will be linked back in. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that that the quality of the repair is deficient in any way. It just means that we will not have that information about you in terms of in terms of the servicing and all that thing you've done. And so we won't be able to necessarily offer some of the services. And now with connected car, as I mentioned, the connected car ecosystem will be connected to your dealer, your Toyota or Lexus dealer. So if you have a connected car, let's say when you're ready for an oil change, the dealer will automatically know because a car will inform the dealer that you're ready for that oil change, and they will then be able to contact you. So we don't have that link with I guess, independent dealers. So.
Hi, I have a question over here.
Sorry.
Over here, sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Hi, I don't know, this may be a little bit out of your area of expertise, but I was curious. I just bought a Highlander, which I really like, except for the technology. I was really disappointed to find out that you're going with your proprietary system of Intune and not Android Auto. And I'm curious, I've read everything I could online about it, and I'm just curious if you know anything more about that, direction to change, and just with a caveat of that, I'm not a real big car person, and I typically buy a car, keep it for 10 years, pay it off, and won't buy another car for 10 years. But admittedly, now with, as you mentioned, cars being, like a driving technology machine, I may have to buy a new car sooner if the technology doesn't improve. It's kind of like my cell phone. I love my technology, and it's got to get better.
Yeah. You're asking a very deep question here, because I was actually involved in quite a bit in some of those decisions that were made, in that area. So you're very right that customers and consumers may start buying vehicles based on the technology more than the quality. And I think, Toyota, as you know, has been known for quality, right? Over the years, QDR, we call it, quality, dependable, reliability is what sold the vehicle. But with quality becoming almost a given, right, there are other things that now are going to start differentiating vehicles. So with that caveat, I will say that if you look at a vehicle, and I'm going to go a little, I know we have time, so I'm going to give a little detailed answer to that. So there are, it's interesting, I think somebody was asking me yesterday about how a car is designed and built, right? So, every vehicle has a chief engineer, right? Partly I want to mention that is they are just like you guys. They are the PMO of the vehicle, the program management office of the vehicle. But what they do then is they pick and choose from horizontal. So there is an electronics platform. There is a transmission platform, all these different platforms, right? And the chief engineer, who's the project management office, they end up picking and choosing what they want, right? So depending on when that vehicle was released, you will get a version of the electronics technology, the version of the drivetrain, version of all that. So the next electronic platform that's coming up has, and I think it's going to show up in the new ES that's coming out. And I believe the new Avalon that's going to come out is going to have choice. It's going to have Apple Play and all that stuff as well, as part of that, right? The package as well. So we've, and this is just my personal opinion, so I'm not officially quoting Toyota here, but there's been a lot of back and forth in terms of, especially as it relates to infotainment, right? Which is the Intune piece, right? What should be, automotive company strategy? Because you also already have an infotainment ecosystem, whether it's with Google or whether it's with Apple, right? They already have all the Pandoras and all that of the world. Should we just support that, right, through an Apple Car, kind of system, or should we build our own with Intune, right? So that's kind of been the back and forth that we have had, and I think where it's ending up is that we're going to get choice of all three, right? You're gonna, the new head units probably, if you're an Android user, you can get into the Google ecosystem. If you are a Apple user, you can get into the Apple ecosystem, or if you don't have either, you can use Intune. and on the infotainment side of things, right? And where I think, and again, my opinion only, so don't get me into trouble with telling Toyota this, is that where I think companies like OEMs can play a bigger role is in the true connected car side, where we are connecting the kind of your information about your engine and all that, right? That piece to our backend cloud, right? Things like predictive maintenance, right? Offering predictive maintenance for you, or offering usage-based insurance, right? Those connected car use cases, I think, are the ones that's probably going to more differentiate car companies, because it may be somewhat challenging to compete with Google or Apple on maps, for example, right? So that's, I guess, my answer. So maybe go buy the new Avalon, maybe. But yeah, it's a common question, I think, yeah.
Thank you so much for the very fascinating presentation today. I have actually 2 questions. So my first one is that some of your competitors have entered into a coalition to develop blockchain standards for data and payments, like car tolls and ride sharing. Do you plan to participate in this coalition as well, or do you have something else in mind? And the second question, if I may, is related to the full adoption of your vision for this vehicle-to-vehicle and vehicle-to-infrastructure communication. Does it require 5G network to be in place?
On the really good questions. Are you talking about Mobi or the blockchain? Okay. You know, one of the interesting things of Mobi is the people running it are former Toyota employees. I don't know if you know that. Yeah. So we are looking at it. We are looking at Mobi right now. In fact, my team is looking at Mobi right now to see whether we should join the consortium. And so in fact, just 2 weeks ago, I got emails regarding that. So just for everybody else's knowledge, I think there is a consortium that's forming up called Mobi, I think, that is trying to set standards in the automotive industry for blockchain technology. So Toyota is certainly looking at it, and as I mentioned, I think the person running it was from Toyota Research Institute most recently. And then in terms of V2V and V2I, I cannot speak in terms of the 5G fully, but I do think that 5G-like technology in general, I think, are going to be more important, especially because of the bandwidth, right? So, imagine, I can imagine a future where you have a self-driving vehicle and the car is taking you somewhere and you're watching Netflix as you go, right? So, in order to enable that kind of ecosystem, yeah, you do need, 5G-like capability. So I can imagine that. A lot of the, and again, I'm speaking a little bit out of turn here because I don't know exactly what's the exact latest, but V2V and V2I, the spectrums themselves are, I'm not quite sure if it's 5G or not. Those are being, right now, I think we're working with the government, right, to figure out which band and what spectrum we're using. I don't know more than that with regards to that. But 5G, just in general, we're looking at not just necessarily for connected car, but even we're looking at it even in the connected factory kind of scenario. And we, in fact, I don't know if there's any AT&T folks here, but we've been trying to run some pilots with them in terms of some of the 5G, just kind of the factory setting as well. Although there could be there's a lot of metal there. So we're looking at a few opportunities that way as well. Yeah.
Right here. Thank you for coming. There's been so many advances in alternate energies, and I actually took a class on this last year. Has Toyota ever considered solar power as an alternate energy? And if so, selected, how would FMEA, a failure modes effect analysis, happen on that type of energy?
I'm not sure if I'm, so I'll answer it. I'll probably be avoiding a question because I don't know all the details. But I think if you look at powertrains, for example, right? To me, there are basically two. One is the gas, right? And the other one is electric, right? And what I mean by that is that, and I'll say this, don't think I'm being, but electric cars are actually pretty easy, right? Easy to build because, in fact, the first vehicle in the world was an electric car. The problem's always been about the battery, right? That was always a challenge because if you look at an electric car, you don't need you don't need a clutch, you don't need any of that, right? All it is, you put motors on the wheels, and it's a very simple vehicle, right? You don't need the entire internal combustion engine and the axle and none of that stuff, right? So with that said, if you say, okay, electric vehicles is one of the the powertrains, then there are many different ways in which you can get that electricity, right? It could be solar, it could be hydrogen, it could be battery, right? It could be any of those, right? Or it could be solar, then which charges the battery, right? So I think all those will play a role. And Toyota's has invested in all those, right? So we have hydrogen, the Mirai. I don't know if you've seen the Mirai. You actually probably wouldn't have because there aren't any hydrogen fueling stations here in Texas. But if you go to California, we have hydrogen vehicles on the road called the Mirai. Again, what a hydrogen is, a fuel cell creates electricity, right? And then we are working on regular battery-powered vehicles as well. And in fact, if you go to automotive news, the latest automotive news, our CEO, Jim Lenz, has an interview, and he talks about that. And I don't know specifically about solar, really. But all I'm saying is we are working on those different powertrains, whether it's hydrogen, whether it's battery, or whether it is hybrid. So.
As a follow-up to the first question, I too drive a 10-year-old car.
Oh, thank you.
And I've never had a laptop or a phone that lasted even remotely close to what I'm used to getting out of my vehicles. In the future, am I going to need to level set myself that I'm buying a new car every 2 or 3 years? Because that's a very different value proposition for the end customer.
Yeah. So, excellent question. And this is, again, I'm not towing the official line, but I'm just talking about my opinion based on some of the discussions we have had within Toyota on some of these topics is, one of the things I think I would see OEMs increasingly look at is an ability to be able to update parts of the vehicle. Not necessarily change the vehicle, but maybe update the head unit, right? The multimedia system on a more regular basis, right? So almost like your iPhone, for example, right? I mean, the beauty of the iPhone is that it updates itself, over the air updates itself on a regular basis, right? So I would expect that very same kind of technology, right, to permeate the automotive industry as well. We do already have over-the-air update capabilities, and it could also very well be that if it's a more intense upgrade, you may have to go to a dealership, and they'll just upgrade that multimedia piece for you. That's where I see the future to be. Now, again, my opinion, but in order to make that happen, there are certain fundamental things we need to enable in the vehicle, right? For example, we need the vehicle to be connected, for example, right? So we don't know what the future is going to be, but we know that whatever that is, it needs to be connected, for example, right? We want enough, let's say, memory on disk space in the vehicle, right? Because we don't know what how much memory and disk we need in the new multimedia system, but we need to make the investment. So that's where the little bit of the rub is, right? How do we make those right investments in that vehicle? And those investments may not be things that you're seeing value right away, but it's future-proofing that vehicle, right, as for the future. And this is a really tough discussion you have internally because, because we want to keep the cost of the vehicle low and we want to, offer that benefits to the customer. So those are some of the discussions that we are having internally in terms of how we can do that. How does that look like? How can we do over-the-air updates? And how can we future-proof various parts of that vehicle so that we can keep it up to date? Makes sense?
I have a follow-up question to that in regards to the platform for Intune, iOS, and Android. It appears that now you have 3 potential options to choose from. At Toyota, from a data perspective, was there anything in the analysis that you guys did that led you to have a 3rd platform in addition to iOS and Android?
Well, some of it is because of I would say, so we again, my opinion, the Intune and Inform platform was something that we've always had, right? So I think when we were looking at offering Android and Apple, it's more of yes, I mean, maybe 90% or 80% of customers are either Apple or Android, but no, there's still possibly a 10, 20%, right, who may not be, right? So that's one element. Another thing we're doing with the Intune Inform is some of the capabilities there that we are integrating with more deeper vehicle-related stuff that you can't do from an external ecosystem, right? Here's an example, just a use case. I'm not saying that we have done it as yet. Is an example would be, let's say in your GPS system, right? Let's say you're using Apple. In your GPS system, you enter in, okay, I want to go from here to Houston. That's it. So obviously, Google will take you there. But on the other hand, let's say you enter that into our own Intune map. Well, what we'll tell you is, yeah, here's the way to get there. But about when you reach, I don't know, somewhere down the way, Waco, you need to go fill gas. Right? So how can we start integrating? And by the way, here's a mobile station nearby. Do you want us to divert you to that mobile station so you can fill gas on the way? So how can we, the platform we offer, right, is going to be, we're going to try to bring together the infotainment things like, map and all that, but then integrate that with deeper data that you can get from the vehicle that you cannot really necessarily get from, the Googles or, the kind of the bought-in ecosystem. That's it.
Okay, so I have a question.
Yeah.
Sorry. His question where he talked about owning a vehicle for 10 years made me think about this. We've already started to talk about, like in our household, not owning a car, right, with just mobility as a service. Yeah. And I wondered about your thoughts. Yeah. And what the timeline looks like that, just to you.
Okay. So. Well, maybe I'll, okay, I'm trying to see how best to answer that question, but so yes, we don't know what the future is going to be. In fact, I'll say this. There was an interview of Mr. Toyota, right? Akio Toyota, who was the CEO of our company. He won an award, and I was just reading his interview. And he was saying that, so the interviewer asked him, what is the future of the automotive industry? And he said, okay, I will tell you what I told Warren Buffett. That is, I don't know, right? And so if that is the case, we don't know what the future of the industry is going to be. But we know it could be differences in the way we buy vehicles. It could be car sharing. It could be mobility as a service. Maybe you order an Uber and a self-driving car comes and picks you up. Whatever that may be, right? How can we be ready for that, right? And so a lot of what we're doing, right, connected. So for example, we know for any of that to work, your car needs to be connected. So we're building that, the connected car into the ecosystem. We know for any of that, we need to be keeping that data and information in the cloud. So we're building that. And then, as I showed the example, we are working on some use cases very specifically around things like car sharing, right? So we have a mobility services platform. So we're doing car sharing. We have set up a like usage-based insurance company. So the way I think about this is we don't know what the future is going to be, but we have some idea, maybe. And how can we start investing in some of the technology to start enabling those vehicles, whatever that future may be? Maybe that's what I would say. And so, and I didn't mention this, but so we have a startup in Legacy West in Plano called Toyota Connected, right? And they have been set up to kind of be the company to kind of take advantage of that connected car. In fact, my boss is interesting. The CIO of Toyota Motor North America is the CEO of Toyota Connected, and that's their mission, right? They're set up like a startup company, and what that means is they have free lunch. And that's what they're doing is, that the example I gave you about that Hawaii, they're building that, and so Toyota's kind of invested in that company to kind of figure that out and try out some use cases and get ready for the future. So.
Hi, thank you for all the good information over here. Here.
Sorry.
Okay, after Cambridge Analytica, we are very anxious about who's going to have our data. You're going to be tracking me where I go, where I am during the day. So as transparency to the consumer, what is going to be your strategy? What all would you be telling me that you're going to use my data for? That's one question. And second question is, we are so used to the gadgets, the Internet of Things. It's excellent. It's going to make our life easy. But what happens when it crashes? What is your backup strategy? So that I'm not to reboot everything because I'll be so spoiled by this technology. So thank you.
Okay. Good question. On the privacy side, I think Toyota, as I like to believe it's a highly ethical company, and we will not collect or use your data without your explicit kind of approval. And you're exactly right. Transparency is the key to all this, I think. Right? We have to be very transparent to our consumers in terms of how we are collecting and using their data. And I think if we are transparent, the consumers may be willing to allow us to do that for consumer value. Right? I'll also add that the Toyota, so there's a consortium of companies, automotive companies, that has formed around privacy, right? That comes from connected cars and all that. And we have come up with a set of self-regulatory kind of rules that we're going to regulate ourselves that are even more stricter than what the federal government is asking of us. So we've decided, not just Toyota, but a set of companies to be even more stricter than what the government wants us to do from a regulations point of view. So that's what I think. In terms of that, well, certainly I don't think your car is going to have a crash, hopefully. In terms of it's partly because we're not going to be using Windows, Microsoft. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, I'm sorry. Is there any Microsoft people here? You'll kill me. I would say that, but there is certainly a risk, right, with digital technology. But maybe even I'll add, maybe even a bigger risk is if your car is a computer on wheels, well, you could get hacked as well, right? So there's a lot of work going on in terms of vehicle security, vehicle kind of a reliability and all that. And the core systems of the vehicle are not going to be, let's say, built on Windows, let's say, right? They're still going to be built on those tried and tested systems, right? And a lot of the electronics and all that is going to be in that multimedia, that connected car space, I would think, yeah. But again, rigorous testing is one of the reasons why you will see Toyota a little slower. And I think you asked the question about why doesn't the Highlander have that? Is because for us, quality is number one, right? And we don't want to bring in anything that does not have that quality. And sometimes we are, a little bit behind, let's say Ford and GM when it comes to some of this, just because, engineers are like, no, it's got to work perfectly. It's got to work perfectly, right? So that's it.
Yeah, I have two questions. One is a little bit of a follow-up on the hacking of the car, and that is if all the cars are connected and you've got all that data. We've seen with Experian and Social Security Administration and lots of retailers that nobody can keep the data. The bad guys are out there and they're taking data. And the stakes go way up if it's now my car and where I'm going, and that's a lot of a higher stake than some of the other stuff. And then a second question is, a few years ago, a lot of you will remember that the NASDAQ just plummeted because of all the automatic trading that happened. And when you have the data driving action, sometimes it can do that more quickly and with a higher degree of complexity than a person can interpret what happened. And it took them months to figure out what took seconds to happen. And so those are my two questions. How do you address those two things?
Yeah. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to fully address your questions, but in terms of vehicle security, I think most of the data in terms of the personal preferences and all that is going to be stored in the cloud, not necessarily in your vehicle, because storing in your vehicle requires a certain level of technology in the vehicle, like memory and all that we don't have, right? It's going to be stored in the cloud, and the entire, so we have a cybersecurity office that's very focused on that, hardening that end to end. In fact, I'll say, I make fun of Microsoft. Actually, our connected car cloud we actually use Azure Cloud as our connected car cloud, and we work with them, and it's completely hardened, right? I'm not saying doesn't mean they can't be hacked, but we'll do everything in our power, right, to make sure that it is as secure as possible. I'll just say that perhaps the bigger threat in terms of the connected car is as much the data, but you've seen some of the DEF CON, the DEF CON conferences, right, the security hacking conferences, where they have been able to hack, I think, the Chrysler or something like that, to shut off as you're driving down the freeway, for example, that kind of thing. That's more dangerous to me, from a hacking point of view, than perhaps stealing your data, safety issues, right? So I think the automotive industry is extremely keenly aware of this challenge, right? Because as you connect your car to the cloud, and not just and then not only are you connecting your multimedia to the cloud, but you're connecting your core systems to the cloud from within the car, that the ability to hack, is very possible, right? So a lot of focus on that, I think, for sure. And then in terms of, what was the second question?
Data-driven
decision making, yeah. Yes, I do agree with you that, when we do get to a point, where we are making real-time data-driven decisions, there could be some of those challenges, right? And I'm not sure exactly how best to avoid that, but I will say this, though, is one of the things we are finding is that the models themselves that we are building, right? I mentioned the example of the predictive maintenance, right? The paint shop, paint line, for example. There, we had two choices, for example, right? One is, there's a lot of pre-packaged models out there, right? Kind of black box models. Like IBM Watson. A lot of folks have predictive maintenance models that they will ship to you. It's like a black box. You give the black box some information, it tells you what to do, right? What we are finding is that doesn't quite fly, especially when you're talking to engineers. They want to know, even as we're building the models, what exactly does it do and why does it do it? So what we are seeing is a lot more of what I call white box models, right? Even to begin with, right? And we are very cautious about what we are building. Even though they may be off-the-shelf models that we can use, we don't, engineers are not going to bet their careers on something a magic toaster is telling them to do, right? And so we're seeing that maybe, and that kind of, even as we build those models, hopefully we build in some of those kind of those fail-safes, perhaps, I'll say.
Yeah. Okay. So it was a great presentation, actually, and I see there is a lot of process involved, right, from manufacturing and collecting the data and doing the data predictive analysis and all that. So my question is, like, is Toyota using any standard processes like Six Sigma or Kanban process, or is there any process inbuilt that you guys are using to get this done?
Yeah. I'll say this. Asking Toyota, are you using process? We invented the process, I should say. Yes, obviously Toyota, we have the, I would say the lean manufacturing, right? Toyota business process, Toyota production system. Kanban, I think, came out of Toyota, I think, or lean manufacturing. So I guess yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Over here.
Hi.
So I was hoping to kind of geek out on your performance metrics. I thought it was impressive that you could track one particular vehicle back to like painting metrics. So how hard was that to accomplish? Because I know our agency is definitely struggling with that one.
Yeah. So it is, so that's the Toyota Big Data Platform, as I mentioned, right? So what we're doing in the Toyota Big Data Platform is we are loading all our data, right, into that one platform. So we have every single vehicle in that platform. We have over 100 million customers here in the US. They're in that platform. And what we're increasingly starting to do is to, anytime we do any analytics, any IoT, it all goes to the same data lake. They call it the data lake. And then we start to link that up together. Now, and I don't know if you're, I don't know if you meant to ask this question, but I'll say this, that yes, one of the challenges is that when a car is getting painted, it doesn't have a VIN, right? So what we have to do in those cases is to do a little bit of a time boxing kind of a scenario to then associate a particular VIN to what happened in the paint shop. But pretty soon, once the VIN, so VIN to us is almost like your social security number, right? So once you have the VIN, then you can just map everything up, lined up to the VIN, including customers, right? What customers own what VIN, for example. So VIN to us is kind of that little social security number. And in those edge cases where we don't have the VIN, then we have to use other methods to kind of try to somehow associate that VIN to either a timestamp or something like that to be able to get that together.
Hi. Yep. I work for Mercedes-Benz, and so I see a lot of similarity in the strategy and so forth. With all the ingenuity and innovation going into the cars, how do you also balance that with the operations and the back end? So your collections, your customer service areas, the dealer systems, are you focusing just as much on innovation and ingenuity in those, or are they falling behind a little bit?
It looks like you work in IS within Mercedes-Benz perhaps as well. I mean, you literally hit the nail on the head, I think. And one of the, I mean, you look at Toyota Motor North America here, a lot of our core back-end systems are on the mainframe, right? And we have, active projects every year to start, migrating many of those to the newer technologies. But the investment is never enough to get us all the way there, right? So it's a constant kind of a struggle and balance every year to balance out what I would call it, keeping the business running kinds of investments as well as against the kind of the innovative investments, right? So, partly the reason why Toyota Connected and others were set up as separate companies, in my opinion, was to then not having to make the kind of a decision between this versus that, to set up a separate company with their own kind of investment kind of criteria that way. So, but yes, it is a constant challenge. We do have, policies like cloud first and even the big data platform I talked about, we are going to move that entirely to the cloud. But again, our bread and butter systems are still on the mainframe. And even right now, we have an active project for uplifting that, things like that. But yeah, it's a...
I think we have time for one more question.
Sorry, I guess I get the last one. I would have thought harder if I knew it was just going to cap it off. So my question is related to some of the vehicle communication that was mentioned. For instance, there's maybe a road hazard or a sudden stop, and the Toyota maybe talks to some other Toyotas that are nearby so that they're aware of this. Obviously, other manufacturers such as Mercedes and others are developing similar technologies who may talk amongst themselves, and maybe these cars all decide to go left and your cars may have decided to go right. There can be, different people solving this problem together maybe possibly don't work so harmonious when they all are on the road together. So my question is, long term, is this something that you would see as being a common carrier type thing where the other manufacturers would have a common sharing of this type of information, or do you see this being proprietary to the manufacturer, type of secret sauce that every car manufacturer would have their own way of solving this problem?
Yeah. Again, this is my opinion, is I think there's going to be standards around those, right? And I mean, generally, I don't know exactly where we are with this, but I know that the government, NHTSA, right, is working on those standards, as well as there's often also this automotive consortium. They talked about Mobi, for example. So I do expect there to be some set of standards emerging, whether it is from the government or through industry bodies, to kind of in areas like V2V, V2I, for example, right? I mean, here you're talking about working with the state government and road companies to kind of for the infrastructure piece, right? So there has to be standards that needs to emerge to make it all work, I think. Now, not to say there may not be some special sauce between a Toyota and a Toyota, but I think my thought is there will be some standards that emerge either through a private mechanism or through the government to all bring it together, I think. And they have, I mean, I'll say this, I have participated in efforts in the past, like in the previous administration, for example, one of the things that they wanted to do was to create, just like, for example, if you look at the utility industry and there was a lot of growth to the economy because of some standardization of data there was a set of companies and firms and business models that came up from that, right? So the government is keenly aware of it, not, just even from a building the economy point of view. So they also push quite a bit for the companies to get together, create some standards so that there can be an economy that grows around that data as well, I think. So I've seen that happen in the past as well, so.
Great, thanks very much. Before you all jump up and leave, we have our high-value door prizes to award. This is our last plenary session together, so please sit tight for a minute while I thank Jay here for his presentation. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.